You got it.
Welcome everyone to Solomon's Crown. So today, guys, we're gonna talk about our experiences with the pandemic. So, just to go in a little synopsis of my situation, I was in the States, away from my family who live in Japan. Uh, it was rough. It was really rough. Luckily, I did get a job out in Japan. I was able to get through customs, and this was back in 2020 of November.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, pretty much no one was allowed to go through unless you were what you called SOFA status, and that's just pretty much like a semi quasi diplomatic immunity type deal. So I'm technically still American, even though I'm in living in Japan. But long story short, I got through, started working. However, there was a bunch of like lockdowns and curfews. I think in the like in the local economic area, like people had to close down their shops at 8 if it was selling alcohol, and it was just crazy. People were just tired of being locked in and whatever. Right now, it's kind of eased. People can go out and eat and whatnot, but it's been a crazy 2 years. It's been a crazy 2 years. I remember when it first hit, I was, in between jobs, and I think the job that I got, I was stuck in a hotel for like
Yeah,
8 months. I mean, granted, I was getting paid, but it was just one of those things where life literally changed forever. Like, this is the new norm now. And I mean, granted, I am not a person that needs to go out or whatever. Like, if I have internet and some video games and some books and some things to learn a new skill, like, I'm good. But I know a lot of people are like losing relationships. A lot of people lost their jobs and all this stuff. So it's been a very life-changing 2 years for people around the world. And yeah, that was pretty much my situation. How was yours, Will?
so in Europe, I mean, truthfully, what sparked this talk again is like our numbers have been spiking a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and we're essentially going into like somewhat of a soft lockdown. They just canceled the Christmas markets and everything. That was like a big thing in Europe to look forward to during the Christmas time. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a big gathering, kind of like how you see in the movies. People are drinking, there's food, there's vendors. It's just a good time. And truthfully, I just don't know where this pandemic is going at this point. I mean, we've been in it literally like 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And while things have seemed like they somewhat changed, it just seems like we are not getting to the point where we need to be, um,
No.
at all. So I think everybody's had a different situation. You saw New Zealand, like we talked about in our previous
Mm-hmm.
video. Uh, New Zealand, I don't know if it was New Zealand and Australia, but I know for sure New Zealand like locked down their country, and they were like super strict. And even in Europe, like you could be fined for being out. I mean, you could be fined for being at the park with like five people, like, and the fines
Wow.
were hefty, like €1,000 fines. Like they had a whole list that they briefed us on, and it was just like a decent list of things that you could be fined for. And I think like the
Mm-hmm.
lowest fine was like 200, maybe €300. Like maybe like being out without a vaccine or something like that. Well, this was before the vaccine. Now they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to mandate the vaccine, and uh, a lot of people in other countries besides America are trying to be all for the vaccines because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is what it is.
So,
Um, yeah, go
okay,
ahead.
go ahead. So it brings me
No.
to my other point of this, which is kind of like, an interesting thing, being as how, we're Americans, but we've lived in different countries, we're living in different countries for years. So when you compare the whole super tribal, partisan situation that's going on with quote unquote anti-vaxxers versus people for the vaccine,
Mhm.
and how other countries are dealing with this whole pandemic. What do you think? Like, is do you think that people basically should have the ultimate right to choose what they do with their bodies, regardless of public health or what other governments think or other organizations think or other people think? Or do you think that the government somehow has to kind of have to enact certain guidelines and laws to kind of protect the people for the common good?
I mean, that's like been the history of mankind, as they would say, is like everybody has their different views on like what the government should and shouldn't do. I think like the biggest thing that was coming up was women's rights with abortions and things like that. It was
Hmm.
like, okay, so women don't have the right to decide on whether or not they can get an abortion, whatever, for whatever reason they choose to. But then you want to mandate a vaccine to everybody and not really try to give everybody a right. So I think that was like one of the big driving pushes for the American people, um, because like I mean that goes back into like everything kind of being like equal when it comes to like
Hmm.
rights and laws. Like there has to be a set ground for what is going to happen as far as this is a law, and anything that pertains or falls into like human rights kind of has to be on that same level. Like you can't have one human right law that is about abortions and things like that, and not allowing people to make the decision, and then have another one where it's like, okay, well, this is also about human rights, but this is what we need from you guys to make our, as people would say, agenda work for us. I just think that ultimately people should have the choice to make their own choices about their body, because I don't feel like that's something that the government should be stepping into unless you are in a specific job. I mean, we like us, well, you
Yeah,
us, yeah.
yes.
I was in the
So
military.
we
I'm in
can't.
the military, so I mean, I don't necessarily. I have a choice, but I choose to make the choices that I make, and I don't care what anybody's standpoints are on whatever their choices are, because that's not something that I'm dealing with. I make my choices based off of me and me alone, and what will be
Mhm.
beneficial to my family. And that's the thing too, is like even um, my homeboys and people that I know, like we don't all have the same standpoints, and that's fine. That's how everything should be, because
Yeah.
that's just I mean, for Americans at least, like you have the freedom to make those choices.
Mhm.
But that's just my standpoint. I think that there's a huge divide. So the huge divide is not necessarily about the pandemic or anything like that. It's more so about the laws that come with it, the ways that things are being regulated, the way that things are being handled. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like if we could just decide on like a way to handle these situations where I don't think everybody's going to be happy, but like truthfully, it comes down to the majority. Like when the majority of people are in agreement, then it makes it a little bit easier for people to kind of get behind what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Um, Definitely agree with the general notion of that. Whereas, you have your own choice. You should be able to choose what you do with your body. Well, if you work in certain jobs, certain positions, you might have to just do what you need to do or, find employment elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I think overall, it's kind of an interesting time because honestly, I've never seen anything like this where, this, vaccine has been pushed so hard.
Mhm.
That's neither here nor there. But it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting time we live in right now. It's caused like so much divide because, on one end, like, the quote unquote anti-vaxxers, like you have Florida with, I believe, Governor DeSantis, sorry. He's being championed as like, such a good governor or whatever. where he is allowing people to pretty much be like, hey, if you want to take the vaccine, take the vaccine. If you don't want to take the vaccine, don't take the vaccine. But we're not like locking down the place.
Mhm.
They're like, I've heard, stories of how these ships with all these cargo, they've been stuck in the ports in California, and they pretty much divert them to Florida, and people are happy, jobs are going up, COVID levels are or depend the COVID levels are going down, and he's inviting people like policemen from other states or police personnel from other states, giving them raises. And we've seen multiple people from actors, civil servants, all sort of people like pretty much walking off of their jobs because of this mandate, because people feel so strongly about this whole situation. They feel like maybe the government may be overreaching a little bit. um it's interesting to say the least, where this situation is happening. I think personally, the way that Governor DeSantis is handling it is the way it probably should be, because obviously the way that he's doing things, there's not, his cases are going down, the pandemic cases are going down, where you have places like in Cali that's like super strict, super mandated, the cases are still up there. Maybe
You
I'm
know how
wrong, but it's just
California
one.
is, like California in
Yeah,
general, like it's like super
it's
strict. I mean, I'm from
super
California,
strict.
and it's just like they're like cracking down on like mufflers and like all this other stuff.
Yeah,
Like
so
that's not like a really good example. Like, and that's me
I'm
being from
I'm sorry,
California. It's just like,
but
yeah.
it's, I don't know, man. It's just, I'm not a government official. I'm
Hmm.
not a health specialist, but it's just,
I think that
I
everybody's
mean,
dealing with the
yeah,
situations in a different way. I mean, like
yeah,
I was told before, is like when it first initially started, I was just kind of like, I don't know why everybody just doesn't stay inside. But then you have to look at the mental health
the mental
issues.
health aspect of it,
Yeah,
yeah,
like some people just literally like with what they're dealing with don't want to be locked in, can't be locked in
hmm,
because uh, they just can't handle it. And
yeah,
that's the thing, is like we're focusing on all these things as far as how they handle the situation, but I just feel like at some point everybody has to get on somewhat of the same page. I mean, I think like the
mhm,
biggest divide is just like everybody's right. Like that's the kind of like
yeah,
what we've
every,
become.
yeah,
Is like everybody's right, nobody's wrong, but like nobody wants to agree. You see it in the media, the divides on there. I mean, the media plays a big part in it, where they're just
yeah,
like,
big part.
like even like the cases that we talked about before, like whereas like the media will portray a situation in a totally different light than what it is, and for people who aren't necessarily like doing their research, because that's a big thing too, is like attention spans on most people. Like we do research, and some people just have never seen the information that we've given. Like, I mean, we post stuff on Facebook, we post stuff on Instagram and things like that, and people are like, oh, I didn't know this was a real thing. Like, it's just like
Yeah,
I've known about this for like years. So
it's just one of those interesting things where back in the day we didn't really have access to information, but now we have like
way too
immense
much.
amounts, like a big sea of information, so you can't focus on everything. So it's just one of those things. But just to talk about a little bit in Japan, it's like it's well, particularly in Okinawa,
Hmm.
from what I've been hearing, they have certain modus operandi of how to operate, but I think a lot of people still didn't really listen. The local populace didn't listen. If you
Hmm.
were part of the DoD, however, it was super strict. Like you couldn't do XYZ at certain times and whatnot. But I
Yeah.
think the local population, they kind of like low key did their own thing,
Yeah.
because Okinawa heavily depends on either American dollars or tourism. So they kind of have to do what they have to do in terms of that. But overall, the numbers have gone down significantly. I think even this week or last week, it was the first time in a couple months where there were 0 new cases. So
Hmm.
maybe the way to go is to kind of like let people be vaccinated or not vaccinated, kind of, let people be, hygienic, social distance and whatnot, wear masks, but just be like clean and be cognizant of like this situation going on. But to like mandate all these things, maybe that's not the way to go. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because it gets
That's just
into
my thoughts
human
on it.
rights.
Yeah.
That's the biggest
Yeah.
thing. It's like once you start imposing on people's like you can and cannot do this. I mean, that's the thing is like a lot of countries don't have the option. Like they're like legit. Uh, in Europe, it's like people like they won't let you in the stores. They won't let you in the do like you can't go to the movie theater unless you're vaccinated. Like or like have a positive or a negative COVID test and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's more mandated outside of the states. Like I was talking to my mom and she was just like, yeah, like I mean it kind of is what it is.
Yeah.
Like
But yeah, that's our thoughts on it. It's just a weird time, interesting time that we're living in. But what are you guys' thoughts? Leave it in the comment section below. And if you made it this far and you like what you see, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because it goes a long way to helping this channel grow. And with that being said, guys, I'm your boy Pop,
boy, Willie, man. Catch you next
and see you
time.
in the next one. Peace.